Hello students, in this lecture we will study a reading which is based on alpha. Okay, so we will be covering every topic which is covered in this reading. This is from risk management. Okay, so let's start. First of all, we need to understand what is alpha. So in short, I will give you a brief one sentence statement so that you will understand what is alpha. So this is basically the average performance in excess of benchmark. Average performance in excess of benchmark. Clear? Now see, every investor, or we can say every fund manager, what they want that they will earn some extra return. What they want to earn extra return, and extra return relative to what? Relative to their benchmark. Suppose benchmark is earning 12.5%. so a fund manager or an investor want to earn something above 12.5, say 13.78%. so how much is the alpha of that fund manager? It is 13.78 minus 12.50%. so we can say that alpha of that fund manager is 1.28%, means he is earning 1.28% more than what a benchmark is earning. Now how he got additional return? How he got return above alpha? Number one is the planning and the strategy. What are the strategy he is following? Suppose there are 5 shares in a benchmark. Suppose there is Reliance, there is Infosys, and we can say there is TCS, so and Tata Motors and ITC. These are the 5 stocks in a benchmark. Now this is allocated with 30% in the benchmark, this with 20%, this with 20%, and the remaining will be in 15 and 15%. But the fund manager wants to change the investment. He says that I am more long on Reliance, so he is investing 45% of his money in Reliance. He said that Reliance will also work good. He is investing suppose 25%. Okay, and he said that TCS won't work that much well. He is investing only 5%. And again he said that I will go same 15% with the Tata Motors. Clear? And remaining 10% will be invested in the ITC. So what a fund manager is doing? Number one, he is trying to change the composition of every share or whatever the share which are required. Okay, and second, he is doing active management. What does that really mean? Suppose there is a period going on in which this was his first composition, that how he made his complete portfolio, but after like 5 weeks he got a positive news about Tata Motors and a more negative news about the Infosys. So what he did, he tried to increase the share by 10% in Tata Motors and reduce the share by 10% in Infosys. So this is an active management depending upon his skills and his forward vision regarding the particular shares. Okay, and in this way, if this will work well, if his strategy will work well, then he will earn extra return. Suppose the benchmark giving 17.5% return, but after doing all the changes and it went wrong, he made only 12% return. So he was unable to make extra return, he was unable to make alpha. Alpha is also known as the active return. But suppose after doing all those changes, he will be able to generate 22% of the return, and the benchmark is will be having 17.5%. So what we can say, alpha is 22% minus 17.5%, that is 4.5% will be his alpha, and alpha is active return. So you can write alpha is active return. Alpha is also known as excess return is equals to, we call this as RT return minus return from benchmark. So these are basically the notations which we are using during the examination. Also you must write that alpha is known as active return. Clear? So in this topic, in this complete topic, our whole focus will be on generating active return, means we need to generate returns above our benchmark. Now when we are talking about the benchmark, we need to set few standards that how we will select our benchmark. If our benchmark selection will go wrong, our whole calculation will be wrong. So we need to find out a great benchmark which can be compared with our portfolio. So we need a proper benchmark. So we will be studying about that, how we can find out a perfect benchmark and what are the required characteristics of an effective benchmark. We will also study about that, how we can say that an investor or an portfolio or fund manager is generating a good revenue. Because why I am saying is that if someone invests in benchmark, okay, he will surely get 17.5% return. But if fund manager is using his skills and he will be taking risk, so we all know that higher risk will generate higher return. But we need to see, suppose there are some criteria, if 1% risk will give you 3% return, 1% risk will give you 3% return. This I am saying in general, okay. But my fund manager, he took the risk of 7% but getting the return of only 10%. This is about my fund manager. Then I will say that my fund manager is not performing well, because in general if he will be taking 7% risk, he will be surely getting the return of 21%, but his risk is very high and the expected risk return reward ratio is really not that good. So there are many things which will be studied. So we will compare the risk and return. So how we will compare the risk and return? It will be with the help of information ratio. Clear? But if a fund manager says that my benchmark is replicating with the risk free rate, then information ratio will be irrelevant. Then we will be using Sharpe ratio. If my benchmark is RF, if my benchmark is risk free rate of return, if this is the risk free rate of return, suppose I will give you an example. Suppose my fund manager able to get a return of 17%, and he said that his benchmark is replicating with the risk free rate. So I will say that risk free rate is 8%. okay. So how we can calculate the risk return ratio? Okay, so we need to see that how much return he is generating for 1% of the risk. Suppose he is taking 1% risk, then how much revenue or how much return he is generating per risk. So for that we need to find the excess return. This is the excess return, that is 9% he is getting excess return. And what is the risk? The risk is the sigma. Clear? What is the sigma? This is the standard deviation of the asset. This is the standard deviation of the asset. Okay. So suppose this is 2%. So what I can say, for 1% risk my fund manager is getting 4.5% of the return. This is fund manager A. There is one more fund manager B. For 1% risk he is getting 4.25% return. There is fund manager C. For 1%, he is getting 3.10%, and there is fund manager D. For 1% of the risk he is getting say 6.25%. So now we can compare all the fund managers. So basically this information ratio, Sharpe ratio are there so that we can evaluate the fund manager and choose who is the best among all. We can say that D is the best among all. If my fund manager will take a risk of 1%, he is generating 6.25% revenue, and C is the worst among all because for 1% risk his return is very low as compared to other fund manager. Clear? So hope you got the complete idea of the chapter, as well as I have tried in the beginning to give you a good idea about the few topics, that is alpha, information ratio, Sharpe ratio, benchmark. Clear? So always see that every fund manager want to get excess return, but we want to know at what stake are you earning this excess return. Are you rising the percentage of risk? If yes, then we need to see that for how much risk you are taking, you are getting the how much return. Then only I can say that your capabilities, that your skills are really of worth. Clear? In our previous lectures we have seen about CAPM. It traditionally what it used to say, it says that there is a positive relationship between the risk and return. The higher risk you will take, the higher return you will get. But there is one more concept of low risk anomaly. Low risk anomaly. It is completely opposite of CAPM. Okay. What this said, it said that the firm who will be having low beta and low volatility will be generating high return as compared to those firms who will be having high beta and high volatility. So low risk anomaly is completely opposite to what CAPM said. Clear? So this is our first point. Our point number 2 is alpha. What is alpha? It is a measure of investor skills. Measure of investor skill. That if you are earning an additional return, without taking any additional risk, then we can say that yes, our fund manager or our investor will be having a great skills, will be having a great knowledge about the market. Clear? So how to calculate alpha? Alpha is basically an excess return above benchmark. Suppose benchmark is earning 15% and my fund manager earned 22%. So what is my alpha? It is 7%, that is excess return. Okay. So what are the notations? Notation is RTEX, that is excess return is equals to RT, the real return, okay, the return of an asset minus the return of benchmark. Clear? This is excess return, this is return of an asset, and this is return of benchmark. Clear? So suppose my benchmark is very passive in nature, it don't buy sell very regularly. So now the question arises that how you will earn this excess return. So in order to earn an excess return, you need to be active. You need to be active. You need to buy, sell, you need to change the composition of the portfolio. So all these are the active steps. That's why this excess return is also known as active return, because you are taking active steps. Now over the period of time you will be having different excess return. Okay, say if I'll compute it monthly for the month of January, February, March and April. Okay, for every month I have seen that in this month it got 10% excess return, in the month of February it got 2% excess return, in the month of March the excess return is minus 5%, and in the month of April the excess return is 4%. Now what is alpha? Now what is alpha? So alpha will be the average of all the observation. Alpha will be 11 by 4%. So it will be 2.75%. Clear? Now comes to the point number 3. We have seen about alpha, okay, and the point number 1 is all about low risk anomaly. But in order to fully understand our alpha, we need to understand two more topics, and the next topic is our tracking error. Tracking error. You got this different excess return. Now you need to find the standard deviation of this excess return. Okay, and that standard deviation of the excess return is known as tracking error. So you can write standard deviation of excess return. Write down standard deviation of excess return. If you are clearly making the notes, you can easily revise it during your examination, otherwise it will be difficult for you to revise all the concepts. Next, write down it measures the dispersion. It measures the dispersion of investors' return relative to their benchmark. The thing is the same, dispersion of investor return relative to their benchmark. Okay, so that will be our excess return, and we are talking about the dispersion of excess return. Tracking error is clear, that is the standard deviation of excess return. Now point number 4, that is information ratio. So information ratio is very easy, that is alpha by tracking error. So we denote the tracking error by sigma bar. So what is this alpha? Alpha is basically the return. Or you can say a mean return. And what is tracking error or sigma bar? It is the standard deviation of excess return. Means this is the mean of excess return and this is the standard deviation of excess return. So this part is basically the risk, and this part is basically the return. Okay, so I will be giving you a small example. There are 4 fund managers and we calculated the information ratio for all the fund manager, just like I have shown you the Sharpe ratio. Similarly, so for one SD they are earning, okay, first I will give you an example. Suppose my excess return, average excess return is 14%, okay, and the standard deviation is of 4%. So what is my information ratio? It will be 3.5%. What does that really mean? For 1% of SD, I am generating 3.5% of excess return. Hope I am getting it. Okay, So for 1% of the risk I am getting 3.5% of the return. So suppose there are 4 fund investors and for one SD he is getting 7.2% of the excess return, he is getting 3.6% of the excess return, he is getting 3.22% of the excess return, and the fourth one is getting 7.30% of the excess return. So whom you will say that he is really the best fund manager? The fourth one is the best fund manager and he is the worst fund manager. How he become the best? Because of his skills, his knowledge about the share market, the way he implemented his portfolio, the way he's implemented the strategies, his buying selling strategy, the timing, like when to buy, when not to buy, all those things, all those decisions were correct among all other investors and he performed really well in the market. Clear? So point number 4 is information ratio. Point number 5 is Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratio. And the Sharpe ratio, when you said that my benchmark is RF, when my benchmark is RF, that is the risk free rate of return. So if my fund manager earn and risk free rate of return is going near about 7%, and if your fund manager is earning say 12%, okay, is 12%, and the standard deviation of the asset return is 2%. So what will be my Sharpe ratio? Sharpe ratio will be RT minus RF divided by sigma. That is, what is your RT? 12% minus what is your RF? Sigma is 2%. So how much is your Sharpe ratio? It is 2.5%. Clear? Now one more thing, we cannot sometimes give the Sharpe ratio and information ratio in percentage form. Okay, so what we will do, we will make our Sharpe ratio as 0.025%. Clear? Got it? And if we will say about information ratio, so it will also change to 0.072, but in our case it won't be 0.025 because see that our risk is very low as compared to the return. So rather than giving percentage, we can say that my Sharpe ratio is 2.5. Clear? And similarly over here I can say that my information ratio is 7.2. Here I can say 3.6. Here I can say 3.22 and 7.30. Rather than giving in the percentage, we will remove the percentage. And how we can remove the percentage? For that, understand here that it is 5% divided by 2%. So percentage sign will cancel out. So what will be left with? We will be left with only the value 2.5. Now come to point number 6. The point number 6 is like the characteristics of an effective benchmark. Write it down. Characteristics of an effective benchmark. So what is my first benchmark characteristic? That is, my benchmark should be well defined. It should be well defined. Clear? That second point is you can verify your benchmark. Number 3, free of ambiguity. That's also very important. You don't want any kind of confusion in your benchmark. Point number 4, your benchmark is tradable. If it won't be tradable or the securities won't be tradable, then you need to find some different alternative. Clear? Your benchmark should be replicable, means you can replicate your benchmark. Suppose if this is your benchmark, this is your benchmark, you can at least you can try to replicate. Like if this is the benchmark, I at least try to replicate my benchmark. Okay, why you are saying that your benchmark should be replicable? There is a reason. If you can't replicate your benchmark, then your tracking error, standard deviation and the tracking error will be very high. Otherwise tracking error will be very high. What will happen if the tracking error will be high? Your information ratio will be low. Clear? And the last and the most important point, that your benchmark will be adjusted for risk. The benchmark will be adjusted for risk. Okay, our point number 7 will be Greenwald's fundamental law of active management. And what this will do, with the help of this law we will calculate information ratio. One way of calculating the information ratio is alpha by tracking error, but we will try to calculate information ratio with the help of this law. Clear? And what is the formula for calculating information ratio with the help of this law? It says two things: information coefficient into square root of BR. What is BR? It's a breadth. Okay, so I will give you a small notation. BR is for breadth. What is IC? It's information coefficient. Now we will understand these two terms, information coefficient and breadth. So information coefficient is nothing but the correlation. It is the correlation between investors' predicted and actual value. Predicted and actual value. I will give you an example. Okay, and breadth is about the number of investment. Breadth is about number of investment. I will explain you both the things. First of all, understand the concept behind it. The concept says that either you will increase your information coefficient, or if you will increase your breadth, your information ratio will increase definitely, because they both are in multiple. Even if you increase IC or you will increase your BR, your information ratio will increase. So in any case, either of these two will increase, my IR will increase. Okay, now we will understand the predicted and actual value, that is IC, and then we will understand the number of investments. Suppose I am saying that the current market price of Google is $1,500. Okay, Google is known by the name of Alphabet. Okay, its share is listed in Nasdaq with the name of Alphabet, AL. Okay, so what I predicted that after 1 month its price will increase from 1500 to 1700. Okay, but my prediction went wrong and it went 1400. Okay, again I predicted about Facebook. Okay, about Facebook, its current market price trading at $241, and I predicted that after 3 months its price will be $257, but in reality it went $263. Means this is my prediction and this is the actual price. This is my prediction, this is the actual price. So what will I do? I will find out the correlation between my prediction and the actual value, and that correlation will be my information coefficient. Okay, in our syllabus we don't have to find out that how we are getting the correlation, but just understand that what is the correlation. The correlation is between my predicted value and the actual value. So now let's take two example. Suppose my information coefficient is 0.25 and my breadth is 4, like 4 times I have made the investment during the year and my IC is 0.25. So what is my information coefficient? It will be 0.5. okay. One more example. Suppose my IC is very low, that is 0.035, but in that particular year I have done 200 different investments. So again you can see that my information ratio is 0.5. Clear? So what the investor fund manager is doing in first section, he is playing very smart and his predictions are really of high quality. Predictions are of high quality. So he don't make so many of investment. He will make a limited number of investment, but his investment will be of really of high quality. Clear? Or if you are not that good in predicting, so what you can do, you can do random trades, and if luck really favors you, you will get a good return. Clear? There are the two basic limitation of this law. Number one is it ignore downside risk. Suppose I am making random 10,000 bets. Okay, so my information ratio will be very high. Okay, but there can be huge losses, right? So this law is not considering the downgrade risk. Okay, and the next, that is all forecasts are independent of one another. When you are finding correlation of all the forecasts made during the year, you said that all the forecasts are independent. Okay, independent of one another. Now we will start with the few topics, and these topics are really small, so we can complete them as soon as possible. Now let's start with the point number 8. So in point number 8 we will be doing a factor regression. What we will be doing? Factor regression. Okay, and why we are doing this factor regression? Because we want to construct a benchmark. Okay, and these benchmark construction with the help of multiple factors. So in order to construct a benchmark, we use a factor regression and we will be using multiple factors. So when we say that we will be using multiple factor, then obviously CAPM will not be used. Then what we will use? We will use Fama-French model. Okay, but in order to go to the Fama-French model, let's just give a small hint that how we can regress with CAPM, so that we can have a better understanding when we will move to Fama-French model. So how to calculate the expected return from CAPM? It is expected return is equals to RF plus beta expected of return of market minus RF. Clear? Now let's suppose our beta given is 1.3. So what will happen? Beta will change to 1.3, then see, it will RF plus 1.3 expected of return from market minus 1.3 RF. Clear? Now expected return is equals to RF minus 1.3. What will it become? Minus 0.3 RF plus 1.3 expectation of RF. So this clearly showing the weights, like if I'll be having 100 rupees, if I'll be having 100 rupees in my pocket, I am investing 130 in market and I will be doing the short in RF. Clear? So now I want to convert my equation to the calculation of alpha. Then what it will be? It will be written, okay, minus RF equals to alpha plus beta of RM minus RF plus any error. Clear? So what your alpha actually is? It is basically an excess return which you are earning above that RF. Clear? I will give you a small example. Suppose I will take a particular share of Reliance Industries, okay, and with this Reliance Industry, one fund manager he tried to get the returns, okay, and he said that I will compare my return with Nifty 50, okay, one of the index of Indian share market. Okay, so what we have seen, we have done the regression, we have done regression of our excess return with a single benchmark, okay, following the rule of CAPM, that we have followed only one factor. And what are the results we got? Now this is the result we got after the regression, okay, and the T statistics is 2.02. So we can say that our alpha coefficient is statistically significant. Now one more thing, this alpha coefficient or this excess return is monthly. So if you want to calculate the annual return, then how we can calculate? It is 0.72 into 12. How much it will be? It will be 8.6% is my excess return. Clear? So when you got the beta, you can frame your equation, okay. The equation will be RB, that is your benchmark, it will be 0.49 will be invested in RF and 0.51 will be invested in the market. This beta is of market, so remaining part will be invested in the RF, and these both will give you the benchmark return. Clear? Now see, this is my excess return, and this is my return from benchmark, okay. So now suppose I want to know the real or the actual return which my fund manager earn. So what will I do? It will be simple, return from benchmark plus alpha will be the actual return. Clear? So again I will explain you so that our concept will be clear and very strong. What we did, our portfolio will be having Reliance Industries and our benchmark is Nifty 50. Okay, what I did, I noted down all my excess return monthly, and after noting down all my excess return, what I did the regression of excess return, okay. So after the regression return, this is the table which I have received, okay. These 0.72%, what it shows? It shows my monthly excess return. This beta shows the weight of my market, and when I deduct 1 minus 0.51, I will get 0.49 which is invested in the RF. Clear? Now I got the annual return, and this annual return is the excess return, and this is my return from benchmark. How I got this? RF and RM. This 0.51 I got from the beta given in the table. So in order to calculate my actual return, what I did, return from the benchmark taken from this part and alpha taken from this part. What I get? I will get the actual return. Clear? Now after doing CAPM, I came to the another model, that is Fama French model. So it will be having many factors. Okay, so there will be alpha, okay, there will be market beta, then beta for small minus big, and there is one more beta that is for high minus low, and there is adjusted R square. So if I will write the coefficient of all, so what will be my coefficient? So before going deep into this, I want to explain you one thing so that your concept will be crystal clear. What is that? The SMB. Okay, what it says, that you are investing $1 in small cap. Okay, you will be buying $1 in the small cap, and on the other hand you will be selling $1 large caps. Okay, similarly high minus low, you will be buying $1 value stock and you will be selling $1 in the growth stock. Clear? So means these positions are setting them off. Okay, now we need to construct the equation for the benchmark return. Clear? So how you will construct? See, 0.67 will be given to market, okay, and the remaining 0.33 will be given to RF. Okay, so it will give you one. What about, sir, what about the small and the growth value and the large caps? What you will do? So see, it is showing that minus 0.50 in SMB. What does this mean? This means that you have short in small cap and long in large cap by beta of 0.5. Clear? Similarly, when I come to this part, what it says, it says that I am with the beta of 0.38, I am long on value, and with the beta of 0.38 I am short on growth. Clear? Now suppose, just for your knowledge, suppose this beta is 0.48 and this beta will be minus 0.72. So what does that really mean? This means that this is positive, means I am long in small cap and short in large cap, and this is showing negative, means I am short in values and long in growth, and with the beta of 0.72. So this will completely set off. Like how it will set off? See, 0.5, that's the beta in small cap. So this is showing the short position. Okay, so on the other hand, when I am long with the same beta in large cap, okay, similarly I am long on value stock, but I am short on growth, so it will be negative growth stock. Clear? So this will completely set off. That's why we have considered only what? Beta of market and our RF as complete 1. Clear? Now see, our adjusted R square is 0.27, but when we are doing the CAPM part only, our adjusted R square was 0.5. 14. So what it shows, that when we have included more factors into our regression, our R square improved. Clear? Now let's come to point number 9. We have seen that alpha, it is computed using the regression, and regression is a linear framework. Regression is a linear framework. Okay, but what will happen when we will come with the strategies which are non-linear? In that situation, there are issues with alpha management. Clear? Now see, this is an example of put. Okay, and if you are taking a put option and it is uncovered, so it is somewhat like a L shaped. Okay, so this is non-linear. So if we will do the regression, we will find the alpha will be positive, but when it comes to the reality, the alpha is not positive. Clear? So what is the reason that regression is giving you the false positive alpha? The reason is that the returns are not normally distributed. This is the reason that we are getting the false positive alpha. Clear? Because when it comes to the options, the return, they are in skewness. They are in skewness. Clear? So these skewness are positive or negative? These are negative skewness. Clear? Why? Because if you buy put, most of the time what it will happen, you will get loss, but in some case you will find that there are huge volatility and you will earn a huge return. Clear? So skewness is not factored into the calculation of alpha. This is the reason that we are getting the false positive alpha in non-linear situations. Clear? And what can be the non-linear situations? So some are options, we can say hedge funds, convertible bond arbitrage strategies, pair trading strategies, all these are non-linear payoff. Clear? If you want to write, you can write. Number 1 is options, number 2 hedge funds, those hedge funds who deal in merger arbitrage or pair trading, convertible bond arbitrage, because all these will be having the non-linear payoff. Clear? So point number 9 is comparatively very easy, that alpha suits only to the payoff which are linear in nature, but unable to provide an accurate alpha for those payoff which are non-linear, because they have not factored the calculation of alpha, the part of skewness. Means while calculating the alpha, they have not factored into the skewness. Clear? So our point number 9 complete. Let's move to point number 10. In the beginning, we have seen the low risk anomaly. Okay, in the point number 10, we will study the volatility and anomaly, volatility anomaly and beta anomaly. Clear? Now let's see what volatility anomaly really shows. It shows that as standard deviation increases, what it shows? It shows that when standard deviation increases, your average return and Sharpe ratio will decrease. Standard deviation increase, then average return will decrease and Sharpe ratio will also decrease. The intuition for the Sharpe ratio is very clear. Why? Because RT minus RF divided by standard deviation. If your denominator will increase, then obviously your Sharpe ratio will decrease. Clear? So what it shows, that those stocks which are highly volatile, they produce lower return, and those stocks which are least volatile, they perform well and they provide us the good return. Clear? Now see, when it comes to beta, it says that when beta is high, Sharpe ratio will be lower. Why it is so? Because beta is paired with the higher volatility, and we have seen that when the volatility is high, Sharpe ratio is lower. But it is nowhere it is saying that because of high beta the returns are low. It is not saying that. So it is saying just only about the Sharpe ratio but not about the return. Clear? So in the high volatility, Sharpe ratio will be lower and average return will be lower. But in case of beta anomaly, when the beta is higher, Sharpe ratio will be lower. Clear? So in order to understand more about beta, let's again go back to our CAPM. What it really says that if you are calculating the beta for a particular period, it will work only for that particular period. Clear? Suppose now I am measuring the beta and now the beta is high for that particular stock. So I can expect if the beta is high for that stock now this stock will earn a high return. But it will not say anything about the future because you have predicted the beta now. So if you can predict the beta for the future, then you can say that that particular stock will perform as the beta. Suppose we have predicted that the beta will be low in the future, then in the future returns will be low. Or if you have predicted the high beta in the future returns will be higher. Clear? Now we have seen that there are many anomalies. Okay, so we can say that these are elusive. So basically you can't find the reasons or explanation for this risk anomaly. Okay, so what are the true explanation basically? So if you'll find the explanation, it can be the data mining. Okay, like anyhow we tried to find some relation in the data, anyhow we tried, or there might be some investor leverage constraints. Investors leverage constraint, either they can't take the huge loan or might be they are not getting the so much of loan. Point number 3 is institutional manager constraint. The manager, those who are managing the fund, they might be having some constraint. Might be they are only on the buy side, they cannot sell the shares, or they might be only in the sell side, they cannot buy the share. So there can be many constraints from the manager's point of view, and some are the preference theory. Point number 4 is preference theory. So here we will complete our lecture. Okay, so if you really like the lecture, please like it, comment it, share among your friends, and don't forget to subscribe our channel. Thank you.